My FPL Game Week 37 team selection. We have just 2 weeks to go. I have just 2 transfers to use left this season. I'm not going to beat around the bush. There is one simple question this week. Should I sell Alexander Isak? Should I buy Ollie Watkins? And then should I captain him as well? What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And we did discuss the -8 that I took in the transfer plans video on Sunday evening, but I think we'll just discuss it again. So I got 64 points, which was a net of 56. So that's why there's a little asterisk next to the game week rank, because the game week rank doesn't take into account the hits that you've taken. So in theory, a game week rank of 766k would be quite good, but unfortunately that was before I took a -8. So I was 4 below my safety score, so I did get a red arrow from 6,969 to 7,777. Yes, those are actually my 2 ranks from last week and this week. I seem to only be getting sort of interesting rank numbers at the moment. Let's see what we get next week. Hopefully it's a green arrow up to 6,666 or something like that, or up to 8,888. Hopefully it's not the red arrow, but at least it would keep me inside the top 10k. Looking at my week, of course, it was the week that I decided to play the bench boost. The bench boost fully bailed me out. 30 points on the bench boost, 34 points in my starting 11 with a -8. So that's only 26 really in my starting 11 and 30 on the bench. Brian Burmo was my captain, one of only 2 returns in my starting 11, along with Gvardiol, who got a clean sheet. But with the ownership of Gvardiol and Diaz, that basically didn't do anything for my rank. It really was the bench that bailed me out. Areola, Sarr, Munoz, Konza. I cannot thank those 4 players enough, all with away games, all with difficult fixtures on paper, and absolutely bailed me out. Now, some of you will say, Harry, that's definitely not your bench. You would have never have benched them. But if I'd have benched a Nottingham Forest defender over Munoz and Forest had kept a clean sheet, you would have said exactly the same. I think Munoz versus one of the Forest defenders was pretty close. Sarr versus Evan Nielsen was pretty close. Raya versus Areola was pretty close. But as the deadline came closer, even when I wasn't certain on bench boost, that was the way round that I had a few things. And Konza obviously was the defender that I was going to bench. So maybe I could have made some decisions, and in another game week, maybe I would have played Munoz over Milenkovic. Maybe I would have played Sarr over Evan Nielsen. But even if I'd have made those 2 decisions, I'm still looking at about 15 to 20 points on the bench boost, which is still pretty good, and a definite bench boost I'm pretty happy with. And it bailed me out of what could have been an absolutely horror show. If I hadn't have played the bench boost this week and had taken that -8, I think I would be about 15k. That 30-point bench boost is, I don't even want to look at where it would put me. That is a massive swing. So very unlucky, I would say, in terms of returns in my starting 11. Could have definitely had more. Saka missed chances, Wissa with 4 chances, Nottingham Forest conceding twice to Leicester, Southampton, of course, keeping Manchester City out, but then very, very lucky with the points I got on my bench. So there really is only one transfer I'm considering this week. I spoke about it in my transfer plans video that there was a possibility that I would do something like Sarr to Rodgers, and I just don't think that is a transfer worthwhile. I don't think Rodgers is worth a transfer compared to how useful that transfer could be for me in game week 38. So instead of doing something like Sarr to Rodgers, I'd rather roll my transfer than do that, I think. The only thing that I'm really considering at the moment is Alexander Isak out and Ollie Watkins in. I'm not fully ruling out that I buy Morgan Rodgers if there was something in one of the press conferences or something that changed my opinion on Rodgers versus Watkins or something like that. But I don't see it as a transfer realistically at the moment that I'm considering. Alexander Isak out and Ollie Watkins in is about the only transfer I'm really looking at the moment. And it probably would be to put the captaincy armband on Ollie Watkins this week at home to Spurs. And I think the general consensus is it's not massively worth the transfer if it doesn't also involve moving the captaincy armband. At the moment, I'd either be captaining Mo Salah or I'd be captaining Brian Burmo. Now, both of them are midfielders, and I don't mind putting the captaincy armband on them, but you've got to expect that Aston Villa will probably score against Spurs and win that game. Now, Spurs are probably expected to put out a reasonable lineup in that game to get some rhythm into their players before the Europa League final, but the motivation's not going to be there. There might be some early substitutions as well, whereas Aston Villa, of course, are fighting for Champions League football and to finish in the top 5. In game week 38, Ollie Watkins also goes away to Manchester United, a team still in the Europa League final, of course, and Alexander Isak goes and plays at home to an Everton team. Now, Game week 38, they're probably pretty similar. I don't think there's that much between them. Isak at home, Ollie Watkins away. Isak playing an Everton team who've been pretty good recently. Watkins playing a Man United team who don't have that much to play for, but if they've won the Europa League, they might have a little spring in their step. The other thing to note is Alexander Isak apparently is going to require surgery after the end of the season because he's managing an injury, which does boost going to Ollie Watkins and selling Isak. And also Arsenal look like they might have Jorginho, Rice, Havertz, Trossard, Martinelli all available for their game against Newcastle, which definitely doesn't look great from a Newcastle output. So I do think that Watkins is clear of Isak this week. It's just how much I feel like the transfer could benefit me in game week 38 versus this week. I think Watkins is a better option than Isak this week. I think it's pretty close in game week 38. So if it's just based off that, I definitely should make the transfer. It's just how beneficial it should be for me going into game week 38. In game week 38, I'd be fine making this transfer if all of my front seven start. So that would be Evan Nielsen at home to Leicester, double Brentford against Wolves away, Watkins, of course, against Man United, Salah, Saka, and De Bruyne. But if theory one of those was to get benched or one of those was to not start, I would suddenly be a little bit short with just one transfer because my defense also looks a little bit light going into game week 38. Now, I don't really want to be making a defensive transfer, but I do realize that double Forest defense against Chelsea. I've got Konza going away to Manchester United, who I'm pretty certain I'm just likely to start regardless now. And Munoz going away to Liverpool, plus, of course, Gvardiol. Having three of those start for me in game week 38 doesn't look great. So I do plan on using one transfer in 38 for a defender, which goes back to the point. If I make this transfer of Isak out and Watkins in, if something was to happen in game week 38, like Kevin De Bruyne doesn't start, or for some reason Saka doesn't start and they play Ethan Nwaneri, then I would be in a little bit of trouble. Sarr away at Liverpool would be my only cover on the bench. So I'd either be forced to play a suboptimal defense, which wouldn't be the end of the world, or I'd be starting to play Sarr or take a -4 to try and fix it. So at the moment, I think I'm more likely to make this transfer than not, because I just think Watkins is better for the final 2 weeks. I like Watkins as a captaincy option this week as well, but I do have an eye on the fact that 2 transfers in 38 is very beneficial in case anything was to go wrong and we would get some early team news, because of course in 38, all the games are at the same time as well. So I do have a little bit in my mind that if I could roll a second transfer to 38, that could be really beneficial, but it would leave me with no Villa attack this week, which against that Spurs team, I do not love. So let's go and have a look at my lineup for game week 38. In goal, we're going with David Raya. Him versus Areola is pretty close. I just know that David Raya has got a lot of those Arsenal players back. The ownership of the Arsenal defence is definitely much higher. And although Forest have not defended well, they do have to score goals, whereas Newcastle could lose this game and still beat Everton and be absolutely fine in terms of the Champions League. Whereas Nottingham Forest, if they do not score against West Ham in this fixture, almost certainly will not be making it into the Champions League spot. So I do plan on benching Areola along with double Forest defence and just hope that both teams score in that game and I don't end up benching too many points that week. Although, actually, if Forest were to keep a clean sheet and it would mean that Bowen didn't score, I would probably take that this week. Into my defence, Gvardiol is definitely going to start at home to Bournemouth. I remain with the fact that I think that Bournemouth at home fixture is a bigger fixture for Manchester City. Their Champions League hopes is more important for them than winning the FA Cup. So I do expect Gvardiol to start. We're going with Munoz. He's only missed one Premier League game this season, and that was because he was suspended. I do think he'll start at home to Wolves despite the FA Cup on Saturday. He's very highly owned. The attacking threat is there. If he does start, it is just a great fixture for him. And then we're going with Konza. It does feel like Aston Villa and Unai Emery are playing these games as if they are cup finals every week. And they do look a little bit more assured defensively. With Tielemans dropping out of the team and them going with Kamada and Onana as this sort of double pivot in defensive midfield, we are seeing a little bit more security in terms of defensive performances for Aston Villa. Those of you who own Martinez have definitely felt it over the past few weeks. Now, it does mean they're scoring slightly less goals, which does put me off going with Ollie Watkins a little bit. We'll talk about that transfer in a moment. Then into my midfield, we'll load up the bench as well here. Sarr is in, and it's Sarr versus Evan Nielsen for that final starting spot. As I said, although Rodgers is probably better than both of these this week, I don't really think it's worth it. I'd rather roll the transfer if I was going to buy Rodgers or use it on something else this week. And at the moment, I'm going with Sarr. Although Evan Nielsen is more likely to start than Sarr is, I just don't expect a haul from Evan Nielsen, whereas if Saar was to start, the potential of a 10 plus pointer from Saar does feel a little bit higher. I haven't fully decided on that decision between the two of those, but at the moment Saar is in, Evan Nielsen is on the bench. And then it's Salah and Burmo, Saka, De Bruyne. Four midfielders I'm really happy to own. Pretty certain that Salah and Burmo, Saka will all start. Salah has been in Dubai with the Liverpool squad. They look like they're having a bit of warm weather training, although how much training and versus how much celebrating they do, I don't quite know. He is still chasing records in terms of assists and goal contributions though, so I don't really have any issue, and I'm not going to sell him between now and the end of the season. It might put me off captaining Mo Salah this week compared to maybe how I felt going into the earlier part of this week as well. Brian and Burma at home to Fulham. There is motivation there. It is a fixture I still like. Fulham do look like they're falling away a little bit. Brentford are hopefully going to close in on that 8th spot, although if Palace do win the FA Cup, 8th spot won't get them European football. Saka, it sounds like a lot of people have got a plan to buy Saka in game week 38, so I could really do with something from him this week to try and get people to buy him in game week 38, but also get a return before everyone else goes and buys him. Newcastle at home, with everyone looking like they're back and available, apart from Marino, who is suspended. I like that fixture. He missed a chance against Liverpool. Hopefully this is the game that he gets something. And the final starting midfield is Kevin De Bruyne. A bit like Gavardio, I just think City care more about Bournemouth at home than they do about the FA Cup final. That doesn't guarantee that Kevin De Bruyne is going to start though, because Haaland, Marmoush, De Bruyne all playing together doesn't look great in terms of how they're able to press when they don't have the ball and stuff like that. So I don't think it's a guarantee that De Bruyne does start, but I'm hoping that maybe he doesn't start the FA Cup and they go with Grealish or something like that. I'm just going to play him. There's no way I'm benching him, and I'm definitely not selling him this week. Into the forward line, it is Wissa at home to Fulham, like we've got with Brian and Burmo. Happy with those two. I do think this is another good matchup. He had chances against Ipswich. It doesn't really put me off having him. I'm pretty happy with him for the final two games. And then it is Watkins at the moment. I haven't confirmed the transfer. I'm definitely not guaranteeing that I'm going to make it. I am going to hear what Unai Emery and Postecoglou have to say in their press conferences, which will both probably be on Thursday because they play on Friday evening. Get a little bit of a feel of how rotated that Spurs team might be, whether Unai Emery wants to be controlling in games, whether they want to go and blow opponents away and score lots of goals. At the moment, I would say I'm about 60-40 in doing this transfer. And if I do the transfer, I do think Ollie Watkins will likely get the captaincy armband. Brian Burmo has the vice captain over Mo Salah, just because that Liverpool team being away this week has put me off going with a Salah captaincy, that even if I don't end up buying Watkins this week, I think Burmo is more likely to end up with my captaincy armband and Salah vice rather than the other way round. So I spoke a lot about the Isak to Watkins transfer a little bit early on. I definitely think it's an upgrade to my team this week. It's just that in game week 38, I would then only have one transfer. And if someone surprising was to get benched, I would be in a little bit or a very difficult position, because I know I need a defensive transfer in 38 realistically to try and get a strong lineup out that week. So I've got to weigh up this week versus 38. As I said, I'm 7 points inside the top 10k at the moment. I need one green arrow either this week or next week. The plan originally was to roll and just target 38. Let me try and get a green arrow in 38. But I'm now thinking my team looks pretty good this week, apart from maybe my 11th attacker in Saar versus Evan Nielsen. If De Bruyne does start and everyone else starts, I think my team looks pretty good this week. So maybe I should try and capitalize on this week and maybe go Watkins in, cover off Aston Villa a little bit, although I don't have Morgan Rogers. But I've got like Saka going against Rogers this week, which hopefully doesn't feel like the worst decision. So at the moment, I plan on buying Watkins. I will, of course, be waiting until the deadline. Aston Villa, the early kickoff. We virtually never get team news for them, but you never know. And I'm not chasing price changes with 2 weeks to go. So we'll wrap it up there. That is the one transfer I'm considering. I'm almost certain I won't do anything else to my team. Drop any questions you have about your team, about Game Week 37 in the comment section down below. It is a Friday evening deadline, so the complete guide will be out on Friday morning. So any questions you have, I'll do my best to answer some in the comments. If not, I'll take a look for benching decisions, players to buy, captaincy, differentials, chip strategy, all of that. Drop it in the comments and I'll make sure to answer it all in the complete guide as best I can as well. Thank you for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.